I just came back from Greece. And the first thing I did was, I picked up my pre-ordered Nintendo Switch 2 from the store. And then at the store, I realized that $95 for Joy-Cons is kind of crazy. Game prices are insane, but the number of people lining up for it was crazy. So in my head, I was like, are people really missing out by not buying this? Are there any better alternatives out there? So as a Steam Deck user, I told myself, why don't we just take a look at this Switch 2 from my perspective? I'll go over features like sleep mode, touch slightly on battery life, complain about not having OLED, go over some bugs people have been encountering, and just really talk about it as someone that really enjoys his Steam Deck. Look, if you enjoy our production, please consider subscribing to the channel. I don't know if you guys can see, but I have really good Wi-Fi speeds in the office, and I'm definitely not getting the same speeds with the Switch 2, which is kind of annoying because it says it's gonna take 2 hours to download Mario Kart. So you know what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna use the dock to connect an Ethernet cable to see if those speeds get any better. And so that's what I did. With the dock connected, I was able to download Mario Kart within minutes. In fact, my speeds had completely changed, and it makes me wonder if there's something wrong with my Switch Wi-Fi card. Anyways, look, I think the Steam Deck and Switch 2 are not really comparable. I do think they are meant for completely different audiences, but the majority of handheld users only want to spend their money once. And if they were given $500, I'd say it's not an easy decision. For example, at its core, my Steam Deck can emulate games, and it comes with all the games that come from my decades of purchases. But the Nintendo Switch, it offers an exclusive experience, like when a game comes out that grabs people's attention. It's so easy to sink over 100 hours into it, and for the most part, the Switch is more family and socially oriented. Not to mention, the average person isn't going to go out of their way to install an emulator and optimize it for the best performance. The Switch is like, it really requires virtually no troubleshooting or an advanced setup. So technically speaking, for around $500, we are comparing one device that simply works right out of the box with a very exclusive feel, and another one that might need a bit more of a setup but could offer an even better gaming experience in return. So if we stack them face to face, this is what they both look like. The Switch 2 is already a lot bigger than the Switch 1, but yet smaller than the Steam Deck. At 13.9mm of thickness, it doesn't feel fragile, honestly. It's light and easy to hold with one hand. Slipping this into a compact bag is far easier, but at 534 grams, it doesn't deliver the same comfort and ergonomics the Steam Deck at 640 grams delivers. The cool thing though is that, like the Switch 1, being able to separate the Joy-Cons from the body makes it easier to travel with. But the Joy-Cons this year can be worrisome. Not only do they now have these lip magnetic connectors that have a bit of a flex to them, don't worry, it's normal, but they do not utilize Hall effect sensors, and Hall effect sensors are just special joystick parts that use magnets to detect movement, which means they don't really easily wear out or cause drift problems like regular joysticks. And when I say drift happens when your controller thinks you're moving the joystick even if you're not touching it. Together though, I don't see any reason as to why these magnetic controllers would ever come off the console. Although when I do that, it may feel like it could flex and fall apart, but it doesn't. The way though it detaches is clever by pushing the Joy-Con away from the body. But yes, with enough force, you can indeed detach them. The buttons feel totally fine. The trigger and joysticks are larger compared to the Switch 1. Some of the other buttons as well, although I've read a few Reddit posts from users mentioning terrible connectivity issues with the Joy-Cons and Bluetooth headsets. Not the case with my unit, but I guess it's something to keep in mind. And then with this is how you use the mouse feature, which apparently works really well with Metroid Prime 4, although the game hasn't come out yet. So yeah, I can't really test that for you guys. When it all comes together, this 7.9-inch display is surrounded by the game card slot, a headset jack, an USB-C port that allows charging, and then the microphone, volume buttons, and a power button. Flipping it over, you'll find another USB-C port for charging or connecting it to the dock, and around the back, the new kickstand that hides a microSD Express card slot. I think Lexar were one of the first ones to offer some of these from what I remember, so you can pick some from them if you want. All of this sits within this matte black frame, which I can't comment too much about when it comes to durability, but it seems like a very similar plastic to what my OLED Steam Deck uses, with only a small amount of fingerprint buildup over time. At least it's not white, so you won't be finding yourself with slightly yellowed joysticks for now, because they might just release new colors at some point. Now, like I said, the body has a 7.9-inch display that sadly might end up scratching just like my Steam Deck. According to Jerry Rig Everything, this here is a level 3 plastic screen. Not ideal, of course, and what seems to be a temporary plastic film on it is indeed permanently fixed to the screen. Technically, it seems like any object that's metal could easily cosmetically damage it. In short, guys, honestly, just get a screen protector. Now, this here is not OLED, which I feel like it could have been. Instead, this is a 7.9-inch LCD touchscreen with a 1920 by 1080 resolution, 120Hz variable refresh rate instead of 90 like on my Steam Deck, with HDR10 support, VRR, and a high pixel density at 279 ppi. I do feel like with a console like this that delivers great story mode games, an OLED screen at say 90Hz like on my Steam Deck could have been a lot more beneficial. You'd get those nice vibrant colors and deep blacks for a more immersive experience. Although the LCD is still not bad. It's really good, in fact, especially with VRR, which delivers really good visual clarity. The colors are good, but of course, as your viewing angle shrinks, you'll lose some of that contrast and saturation. The reflections are also not bad at all. I do wish the bezels were thinner though and gave that more premium feel, but it will deliver a solid gaming experience. And besides, if you really want OLED, you can always use the dock and play on an OLED screen, which is something I don't do with my Steam Deck, mainly because it's a bit of a finicky experience. You really need to find the right dongle to dock it. Often connecting an Xbox controller is a mess. At the end of the day, the Steam Deck docked for me is just not as good as what the Switch can deliver. Besides, the Steam Deck already feels like a more personal and private gaming experience. Although with the Switch 2, the dock it comes with really allows you to enjoy a proper 4K family-oriented gaming experience. The dock itself has a similar material to the console. It's quite small, really, won't take much room within your media unit. It's got two USB ports around the side. Then the removable back cover reveals a USB-C port, an HDMI 2.1 port, and a LAN port. But keep in mind that even though it supports HDMI 2.1, it's important to note that when docked, the Switch 2 does not support variable refresh rate, but it now supports a 4K gaming resolution when it's connected to a compatible display with HDR and up to 60 frames per second. But you can achieve 120 frames per second if you drop the resolution within the system settings. Although with Cyberpunk scaled at 4K, I found that the gaming experience was quite stuttery with some input lag, and even at 1440p with graphics set to performance, it would sometimes bug. With graphics set to performance at 1080p, however, I found that gameplay definitely felt a lot less stuttery, but still not as good as what I think a $90 game should be. Aside from that, one thing the Steam Deck doesn't have are cartridges. When you have cartridges, it makes you feel like you genuinely own the game. Within the Steam library, everything is pretty much online, right? So if you lose your account or you get hacked, you might just lose everything. But with cartridges, you don't. Or at least this is what Nintendo wants you to think, because some cartridges contain only a key and not the game loaded in them, which means that relying on digital downloads raises concerns about long-term access, since the game must be downloaded, an internet connection is required, and the worst part is that game key cards are often priced similarly to full physical cartridges. With that in mind, I think one of the things that can suck about the Switch is how Nintendo are also attempting to sell games at AAA prices but with none of the technical performance that justifies those prices. When it comes to backward compatibility though, Nintendo Switch 2 actually does a really solid job. You can take pretty much any Switch 1 game, whether it's a cartridge or a digital download, and it'll work right out of the box on the new console. And I know this for a fact because multiple users on Reddit have claimed their entire libraries transferred over without any issues. Now, some games need free or paid upgrades to unlock better performance. Games like Super Mario Odyssey get a free boost, while Tears of the Kingdom offers paid upgrades. On average though, the upgrades are costing between $10 to $20 a pop, and then unlike the Steam Deck OLED that comes with 512GB of storage, the Switch 2 comes with 256GB of storage to install all your games, which is much better than the previous 32GB. With 512GB of storage on the deck though, you can easily install some of the best AAA games and have a really good gaming experience, which is something the Switch 1 somewhat lacked. On the opposite side though, with the Switch 2, games like Hogwarts Legacy look incredible, but the crazy part for me is how good a game like Cyberpunk can look, especially when compared to the Steam Deck. Having DLSS on Switch 2 is a key feature, something the Steam Deck doesn't natively support with its AMD GPU, so a game like Cyberpunk will perform just as good in terms of FPS, but with much smoother graphics. With the Switch set to quality, you can expect frames of around 25 to 30, and when set to performance, of around 40. The gameplay honestly feels very similar to the deck, but a bit less choppy obviously because of DLSS, although the image quality cannot be pushed as much as on the Steam Deck in my opinion. It's just not as sharp and the graphics aren't as good. And then let's say you are having a nice gaming session on either handheld and you wish to put it on sleep mode. Check this out. Instant. And then I can come back to it right away. Pretty freaking fast. Now with the Steam Deck, I guess we can say it's a bit of a different story. You turn it off, it loads like this. You know, it's in sleep mode. You can go away and then turn it back on. It takes a bit longer, but just a tiny bit longer. There you go. Now, compared to the Switch 1, backward compatible games are actually much better played. Like I mentioned, Switch 2 backwards compatibility is amazing. A game like Metroid Dread, for example, which benefits from the higher baseline performance, outputting really sharp and fluent graphics, delivers a nice gameplay. From my research, it really seems like backward compatible games are running much better on the Switch 2, which to my conclusion, well, you're still getting your money's worth in some way by upgrading your game to the new hardware. Before I dive deep into the UI and some of the concerns, I do have to say haptic feedback is nowhere near as good as the Steam Deck, like no chance. The Steam Deck haptic feedback is so good, and I think it's because the grips are definitely chunkier, which allows maybe for bigger motors and stuff, but it's not that the Switch is not good, it's just not as good. As for the UI, that is something that didn't change at all really. I do like how simple it is and it's generally really easy to understand for those who haven't owned the Switch yet. The settings are not complicated at all. Whatever you need is usually a couple of button clicks away. It's plug and play just like the Steam Deck, but the Steam Deck really allows you to dive deep into desktop if you want to start modding certain aspects of your handheld, which is something the Switch just doesn't have, so keep that in mind. As for the speakers, they both sound almost similar, with the Steam Deck having a bit more punch to it.
Morning, Night City! Yesterday's body count lottery rounded out to a solid and sturdy 30. 10 out of Haywood. Thanks to unabated gang wars. One officer down, so I guess you're all screwed, cause the NCPD...
Aside from this, the only complaint I keep hearing is related to Bluetooth connectivity. Someone was complaining about not being able to connect a JBL speaker, for example, and more than 2 controllers at the same time. In terms of bugs, I saw a lot of people complaining about Joy-Con connectivity issues, screens flickering randomly, which happened to me once while it was docked, games crashing non-stop. Apparently it keeps happening. There's actually a whole thread about it, and what I'll do is that I'll leave a link comment down below, okay? Because you'll also see a lot of people complaining about battery life. In fact, some people claim that battery life on handheld is just terrible, which is why I did a small battery life test with a Bluetooth speaker connected and somewhat medium brightness. With a game like Mario Kart, playing handheld seems to be dissipating battery at a rate of 0.5 to 1% per minute, which is not the best, really. I've got to say that. Playing Cyberpunk, you'll realize how quicker battery consumption becomes. I think overall, honestly, you can expect to get a battery life of about 2 hours, I want to say, if you play these type of games non-stop, of course, which I think you are about an hour short compared to the Steam Deck, really. Then I did a quick sleep mode test where I left the Switch in sleep mode for about 40 minutes and came back to about 25%. That's actually not bad. It's very similar to my Steam Deck. For sure though, just like we saw with the Switch one, updates will allow the device to have better battery performance with time. It's of course too early to tell, but as of right now, battery performance is not the best. If I wanted to spend the money once, I much rather the Steam Deck, mainly because I'm a techie and I know how I can work around it to deliver the best gaming experience for my needs. But if you are someone that can afford both, I definitely think that is the best case scenario. You'll be able to enjoy titles that are exclusive to the Switch 2, and you can easily play with your significant other or your family. However, it's really important to know that for a lot of people, having a console that just works out of the box with exclusive titles that can deliver great performance is just unbeatable, which is why people will choose the Switch 2 over the Steam Deck.